Jared Young was the catalyst to a huge offensive night for the New York Mets as they won their fourth straight game and took home yet another series win.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. I've been covering the New York Mets on this show since the 2019 season. This is the only podcast that covers the Mets 7 days a week throughout the regular season. If you want to find any of my written work, you can do so over at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Now, on Tuesday night, the Mets had a very eventful first inning. A lot took place in that first inning. Most of the action in the game took place in the first. It all began with Tylor Megill on the mound, where he gave up a 2-run homer to Miguel Vargas. And while that was the real mistake of the game, you could say, for Megill, as he only did give up 2 runs, to me, the home run pitch wasn't really that bad. If you look, Francisco Alvarez flashes his glove up and in on Vargas. Megill hits a spot. Might have been a bad pitch selection by Alvarez. Regardless, that wasn't the issue. The issue was the batter before Vargas, Mike Tauchman, falls behind in the count 0-2, and Megill loses him. You just can't issue walks when you're ahead 0-2. They always come back to bite you. It's just some type of a baseball karma where you let the batter off the hook and it's going to bite you, and it did immediately as Vargas hit that 2-run homer. But to Megill's credit, he was able to settle down from there, and the Mets made us all forget about that home run because they hit a couple of their own in the bottom of the first inning after one of the weirdest plays you're going to see. Brandon Nimmo got a 1-out infield single. Juan Soto rips a line drive to right center field, and his bad luck just continues because Michael A. Taylor makes a great effort, lays out, makes a diving trap, not a diving catch. But because it was such a bang ball hitting the ground right into his glove, of course the crowd reacts like it was an incredible catch. The White Sox players are holding their arms up. They think it's a catch. Brandon Nimmo, who was booking it, trying to get to third base on a potential single or maybe even score on a double, instead, now he thinks it's a catch, and all of a sudden he's got to bust it back to first. Juan Soto is already running back in towards the dugout until he realizes that it was ruled a trap, not a catch. And at that point, it was too late. Nimmo went flying past him, which in turn meant that Juan Soto had passed up Brandon Nimmo on the bases, and that resulted in Soto getting called out. So an eventful play, but very quickly, Pete Alonso gave you some feel good to forget about the frustration. Although I'm sure all of you are thinking, man, this should have been a 3-run homer. Pete crushes one to deep center field. It gets out. That ball went 419 feet, came off the bat at 113 miles per hour. It was home run number 237 for Pete Alonso in his career. He is now 5 away from tying David Wright for second place on the all-time list, 15 away from Darryl Strawberry's mark of 252 homers. You do the math, Pete's at 11 home runs, and we're not even quite in June yet. So if he has a big month of June, and we've seen in the past, Pete certainly has the ability to hit 10 home runs in a month, all of a sudden, come July, we could be on home run watch to see if Pete can get that record. I wouldn't expect it before the All-Star break, but potentially before the trade deadline. It's going to be obviously a big subplot to follow as we get into the summer months where the ball typically does start to fly a little bit more. And Pete right now certainly seems to be back in his groove. And when Pete gets into one of these rhythms, any pitch that he can handle, he can hit out of the yard. So it's going to be fun to see how many he can rack up over the next couple of weeks here. Now, after Pete's home run, Brett Beatty had a broken bat single. And then here comes Jared Young, who got his 4th consecutive start. It's funny because I texted my buddy Elijah Evans, who works with me over at justbaseball.com. He's a diehard White Sox fan. And we were texting earlier in the day, and I said, for some reason, I had a premonition, Jared Young's going to homer tonight. And he said, that is the most random prediction ever. I said, hey, text me back later when Young does it. And sure enough, Jared Young hits the 2-run homer. I was actually going on a little bit of a jog, And I was listening to the game, Howie Rose taking me through my little mile run that I was doing, trying to get back in shape. And it was pretty wild because when Pete hit the home run, I was excited, of course. When Jared Young homered, my prediction was right. I leaped. I literally leaped mid-jog. I was pretty fired up, but an awesome moment for Young. And the reason why I thought he was going to hit a home run in this game is just because of the confidence the Mets have clearly put into him here. To start him 4 games in a row after calling him up, it shows you they really believe in his bat. All of those games coming as the Mets DH. It kind of feels like this is their Jesse Winker replacement right now, and he certainly had a monster game. He's been controlling all of his at-bats. Carlos Mendoza said it before the game that every single at-bat, it seems like he's sitting 2-1 or 3-1 in a good hitter's count, and that's exactly what he was able to do throughout this game to get a couple of big hits. After you had Jared Young's homer, Mark Vientos and Jeff McNeil each singled. So there was at one point 6 consecutive hits by the New York Mets, even if Juan Soto's was taken away in the box score. But a really big offensive inning, and I don't think we've seen that from the Mets in a while, to have that level of a first inning. Last year, when they were rolling, it felt like there was a lot of big first innings. So maybe this is hopefully a sign of more things to come. The Mets tack on another run in the 3rd inning, thanks again to the duo of Brett Baty and Jared Young. Baty ripping a leadoff single. Young then doubled him to 3rd. He took a ball that was off the plate outside and ripped it into right center field, showing that power that he has. And then Jeff McNeil was able to cash Baty in with a sacrifice fly. The Mets would score one more run in the 8th inning as Jeff McNeil, Francisco Alvarez, and Francisco Lindor all singled in the inning, with Lindor picking up his 31st RBI of the season. But altogether, the Mets got 12 hits in this game. Everybody got a hit in the starting lineup except for Juan Soto, but we're still going to count it. So every single hitter was productive. Francisco Lindor, Brett Baty, Jared Young, and Jeff McNeil each got 2 hits apiece. So a great game by this lineup. And on the pitching side, Tylor Megill had another good, not great start. He settled down after that first inning, gave up a 2-out double in the 2nd inning, but was able to quickly strand that runner. Leadoff single was erased with a strike him out, throw him out double play in the 3rd. He worked around a 1-out walk in the 5th after a 1-2-3 4th inning. 6th inning, he goes back out there as the Mets bullpen continues to be very taxed. Not a lot of arms available for Carlos Mendoza, he revealed after the game. So they tried to get some more out of Megill, gives up a leadoff single, gets a couple of strikeouts. But then he lost it. Issues a pair of walks to load the bases. And then who comes on to relieve him? Jose Butto, who came into the exact same situation a day ago. Okay. So 2 games in a row, he's come in with bases loaded spots. And he also got the job done again, although a line drive off the bat to left center field. And with Jeff McNeil playing center field, you had to wonder, was he going to get there? But McNeil got a great jump, was able to make a running catch to get the Mets out of that jam. 7th inning, Butto got a leadoff out on a fly ball, gave up a base hit, but then he got what could have been a really good double play turn. Francisco Lindor made a great play on it. Really good feed to McNeil. McNeil just had a throw that took Pete off the bag, and they were not able to turn 2. Then Butto gave up another single, a pass ball plated a run, a double plated another, and then Jose Castillo came into the game to face a lefty, Andrew Benintendi. He hit him. And we've seen this before with Jose Castillo. It's like we're in Groundhog Day, where he comes in to face a lefty, walks them or hits them with a pitch, doesn't get them out, but then the righty comes up, he gets the job done. In this instance, it was switch hitting catcher Edgar Quero, and Quero struck out. So Castillo continues to be a nice piece of this bullpen. In the 8th inning, he gave up a hit, got an out, then was pulled for Reed Garrett. Garrett continues to be unbelievable. He struck out 2 batters to strand that runner in the 8th. Then he worked around a 1-out walk for a scoreless 9th, picked up a 5-out save. Garrett this season has allowed only 2 earned runs in 23 2/3 innings of work. He has a 0.76 ERA. So altogether, a really nice team victory for the Mets. Got just enough quality pitching out of the bullpen. Tylor Megill at least was able to pitch into the 6th inning on this one. And Jared Young had his big breakout day, rewarding the Mets for trusting him in that starting lineup 4 games in a row. Could Jared Young be here to stay? I want to talk a little bit about the Mets' new DH in the next segment. Like I said, a lot of faith has been shown in Young to keep running him out there, and now it seems like the Mets might just have their Jesse Winker replacement. The question is, how long do they rely on Jared Young? Does Ronny Mauricio factor into this picture at any point? How do they navigate the clearly diminishing returns from Starling Marte and Mark Vientos going through his own struggles this season? We're going to address all of that in the next segment. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where'd all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center where you can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, and even to plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever as you can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. If you're watching on YouTube today, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Help us get to our next goal of 14,000 subscribers. If you're liking the video, throw a like on it and leave a comment. Do you think Jared Young is here to stay, or do you think this was just a flash in the pan? My take, he's here to stay for now. I think the Mets are going to continue to give Jared Young playing time because if you look at this lineup, I think Jared Young offers more out of the DH spot than pretty much anybody they could cycle in there outside of Mark Vientos. And frankly, Mark Vientos just has not earned everyday run as the DH. So you look at the situation right now, you got Starling Marte, who is hitting 297 in the month of May with a 409 on base percentage, but 324 slug. He's not impacting the baseball much anymore. He does give you a professional at bat. He does get hit by a ton of pitches, which is a real skill set for him, it seems like. But outside of throwing him out there against lefties, I would not want to see Marte as the guy at DH. And Mark Vientos, you look at his numbers this season, he's got a 682 OPS and he's homered one time in the month of May. I still believe in Vientos as a bat, but we just have not seen it. Brett Beatty has earned an everyday role, and he obviously has the ability to play a good third base and second base. So the Mets can still, against lefties, put Beatty at second and Mark Vientos at third and have Marte DH if they want to keep giving Marte a run. But when it comes to a right-handed pitcher on the mound at this very moment, it makes the most sense to stick with Brett Beatty at second or third. If you want to start Vientos at third and put Jeff McNeil in center field like they did tonight, you can. But Jared Young should be DHing right now. And it's pretty wild to say that because you really didn't know what to expect out of him this year, but we've been talking about this guy since the Mets signed him in, I think it was December, guy that they clearly believed in. He came with some roster flexibility as he still had options left, so the Mets are able to call him up and send him down up to 5 times this year, so he gives them real depth in Syracuse, that flexibility with their roster. But if you look at his numbers over the last couple of years, this is a guy that has consistently gotten to power. In 2023, his last year with the Cubs, he hit 21 home runs in 90 games in AAA, slugged 577, gets called up, still hit a couple of home runs in 16 games, 3 triples, but he only hit 186. And pretty much all of his hits were for extra bases, 5 of 8, the 3 triples, the 2 home runs, slugged 465, but didn't do enough to clearly earn a roster spot moving forward. So instead, Jerry Young ends up with the Cardinals in 2024, is in their AAA affiliate, played 75 games, hit 285, 411 on base, 506 slug, a 917 OPS, hit 11 home runs, 15 doubles, and 2 triples in 75 games. Talked to the upper management with the Cardinals. Am I ever going to get a shot to play on this team? They pretty much said probably not. So he decided to take his talents to the KBO. He played 38 games there, hit 10 home runs, 16 doubles, and a triple, slugged 660, OPS over 1,000, drove in 39 runs in those 38 games, really made an impression on the Mets, who I guess were scouting that Doosan Bears team, as not only was Jared Young on that team, but Brandon Waddell was as well. And the Mets ended up bringing both those guys aboard. Comes to Syracuse after a little bit of a late start due to an injury. Hits 259 with a 371 on base and a 506 slug, an 877 OPS in 22 games. Hit 5 home runs, but 4 of them came in his last 10 games played in Syracuse. The Mets had pretty much a dead roster spot with Jose Azocar. They had Brandon Nimmo day-to-day with that neck injury, so they decided on Saturday after the marathon rain delay game, might as well get some fresh blood in the lineup. They bring up Jared Young, and he has been a fixture over these last 4 games, and what you're seeing is a really good professional approach. The guy has a good eye. It's pretty much everything you hope DJ Stewart would be. Granted, it's 1 game. So we'll see. We'll see how he progresses. I'm not saying after a single game that Jared Young is the answer for the rest of the season. But until Jesse Winker comes back, I do think he might be the best option. And so from my vantage point, there's no reason to reinvent the wheel and go back to Vientos as the everyday DH and start playing Acuna again, because Acuna's not hitting. Now, Acuna is sort of in this weird limbo right now where he is still a valuable member to your team, because this is a guy that right now is showing you his floor as a big leaguer. And I've talked about this dating back to his days as a prospect. I talked about it last year when he was struggling in Syracuse, and then he came up and he flashed, and we talked about it all throughout the offseason. Luisangel Acuna has the skill set to be a great bench player in the big leagues. And if that's his role for the New York Mets for the next 6 years, and that's what they got from a bloated Max Scherzer contract, it was a great trade. It doesn't matter if he never blossoms into the second baseman of the future for the New York Mets. He's a great defender. He's the perfect utility guy for bench, your backup shortstop, a guy that's going to get subbed into pretty much every single game because of his defense and speed. And so you can have Jeff McNeil start, play most of the game, either get shifted out to the outfield or pulled from the game for Acuna late, and he can give you that great defense in the final couple of innings. He can get dropped into the game when you get a runner on base, as he did again today. He did score that final run. It was McNeil that got the hit, and then Acuna came in, went to third on Alvarez's hit, and then scored, of course, on Lindor's. There is a clear role for Acuna. The only problem with that role is you are slowing his development as 23 years old, a guy that still could be your second baseman of the future. I'm not necessarily giving up on Acuna. I don't think he's going to be your starting second baseman in the playoffs this season, although that certainly could change. You really can't paint with that broad of a brush this early and say, oh yeah, he's done. But I think he needs some time to develop. Right now, though, you need him on the roster. So the Mets are in this weird place where it doesn't make sense to send Acuna down, especially until Ronny Mauricio is ready. And even when Mauricio is ready, if Jared Young is hitting, Ronny Mauricio does not fill that bench role as well as Acuna does. Ronny Mauricio, if you call him up, you want him to play. Now, if Jared Young had this one great game and over the next 2 weeks, he starts striking out a bunch, he doesn't impact the baseball at all, and he's 1 for his next 21 or whatever it is, then at some point, if Mauricio keeps hitting, you flip those 2 guys. And Jared Young goes down and you give Mauricio a shot to get a little bit of run of playing time. But if Jared Young keeps hitting, I think you completely delay any decision on Young until Jesse Winker comes back. And then you got to make a tough call, because Jesse Winker's obviously got the contract and has the track record. If Young keeps hitting, though, you keep yourself in the big league. So he has a real opportunity in front of him, a lot of runway. I think Acuna sticks on the bench until Jose Siri comes back. That's the first time the Mets have to make a decision. If Young keeps on hitting until then, I think at that point you probably send Acuna down, go without a backup shortstop, and roll with the team as is for a little bit, with Siri then being your late inning pinch runner. But it's definitely an interesting spot the Mets are in, because this guy could be some found money that is a really nice piece for your team. You never know. You never know if you find a diamond in the rough that's going to stick, or if it's a guy that might just have had one big game at the end of May. But I definitely think the at-bats are looking really good. They clearly like him a lot to have started him 4 straight games. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if he's right back out there for the final game of this series. I really wouldn't, because you want to see what you got. Because if it doesn't look good, you have a guy in Ronny Mauricio that might deserve to come up. And then if Mauricio comes up and is hitting well, when series ready, then you can send Acuna down and your roster makes a lot of sense. Anyway, in the final segment today, I want to talk about Tylor Megill. Could this have been one of his last starts in the big leagues for some time? I'm going to talk about a potential option on its way sooner than later. We'll go through that in just a minute. If you're an everydayer that's always tuning into the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. It's our texting service where you get updates from me anytime news breaks in the Mets. You can ask me questions anytime, take part in our Locked On Mets signed photo giveaways, and get the lineup graphic sent to your phone each day so you know who's in the starting lineup without ever having to go on social media. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find a link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. Right now, if you look at the stats, Tylor Megill is arguably in a career year. He's made 11 starts. He's pitched to a 3.52 ERA, and he has 72 strikeouts in 53 and 2/3 innings pitched. Those are all really solid numbers. But you look at the breakdown. In April, well, combination of March and April, he had made 6 starts and pitched to a 1.74 ERA. In 5 starts in May, he's got a 5.96 ERA. He's only made it through the 6th inning once this season. Hasn't made it through 5 in 3 of his 5 May starts. And when you have a 6-man rotation, getting deep into games becomes even more important because you are down a man in the bullpen. So if you have a guy that's only going 4 2/3, not really the arm that you want in that rotation. And Paul Blackburn is going to get an opportunity, which is what could necessitate Tylor Megill going down. The Mets decided to give Paul Blackburn one more rehab start. Tim Britton of The Athletic reported that he was going to pitch in Syracuse on Tuesday night. Unfortunately, that game got rained out. But that doesn't mean that he's not going to make another rehab start. There's every chance that on Wednesday, they will have Blackburn make a rehab start. And then after that, he would be good to go, potentially to start the first game of the series against the Dodgers on 4 days rest. That's what Tim Britton had reported, that he was going to make a rehab start on Tuesday, and then you could pencil him in to start the first game of the Mets series in LA next week. They probably would have just sent him to LA early, my guess, what the thought process would have been. They would have gone Blackburn, Megill, and then rolled into the rotation beyond that. But now I could see the Mets going with Megill first just because he'd have an extra day's rest. After he makes that start, though, you can make a case for optioning Tylor Megill and sticking with a 5-man rotation that includes Paul Blackburn, because what you would do is you'd go with Megill on Monday, Blackburn on Tuesday. If you look at the way things are lined up for the rest of the week, Griffin Cannon's going today, David Peterson on Friday, after the off day on Thursday, Senga on Saturday, Holmes on Sunday. You go to Megill, Blackburn, back to Canning, and Peterson would close out the series against the Dodgers. Kodai Senga, Clay Holmes, and then Blackburn would pitch in Colorado to close out the road trip. Then the Mets have an off day on Monday. So that's Kodai Senga's extra built-in day of rest. You can roll with a 5-man rotation. The Mets would play a 6-game homestand. Canning would go the first and the last game of that 6-game homestand, being able to pitch on 4 days rest. So it would be Canning, Peterson, Senga, Holmes, Blackburn, back to Canning, day off. Then you go Peterson, Senga, Holmes, Blackburn, Canning, right back to David Peterson for a 6-game road trip where the Mets are going to play the Braves, then the Phillies, and then they come back home without an off day. So that's when you would need a 6th starter before Kodai Senga's turn. So if Tylor Megill pitched on either Monday or Tuesday, the 2nd or the 3rd, and then got optioned, the Mets could keep their full 8-man bullpen with the 5-man rotation. They won't need a 6th starter until June 23rd. He can come up, and then they can roll with the 6-man rotation to close out the month because there won't be any off days at the end there. So you would need a 6-man rotation. I don't think Frankie Montas will necessarily be ready, although you never really know. There is a chance that Montas could be ready, where maybe for that second turn where you need the 6th starter, it's Montas. So maybe it's Megill making a spot start, goes right back down. And then when Montas comes up, maybe you have a 6-man rotation moving forward. It all depends on how Blackburn pitches, certainly, because I don't think that he's guaranteed to stick around in this rotation. I think The other guys who have pitched well this season have certainly earned their spot for the foreseeable future. I don't see anything knocking a David Peterson or a Griffin Canning out of the rotation, Clay Holmes, until he starts to show signs of breaking down as a starting pitcher because it's his first time really doing it. For now, he's locked in. Obviously, Kodai Senga's locked in. And then once you get Montas back and Sean Manaea back, remember, those are the two guys that the Mets spent the most money for this offseason. They will be in the rotation. So Tylor Megill is on borrowed time right now. I think that is pretty clear as far as at least his spot in the rotation. Now, could the Mets decide to shorten things up and have him pitch out of the bullpen? Absolutely. And the strikeout stuff that he showed this year, maybe it does translate. But I think when you have a guy like Megill that can be parked in Syracuse as an optionable starting pitcher, where when you need a spot start, it's not Brandon Waddell, it's not Justin Hagenman, it's not Blade Tidwell, it's Tylor Megill. That's a luxury for a contending team. And also, I briefly talked about this on yesterday's show. I think Tylor Megill would hold some trade value at the deadline if he is the eighth man on a depth chart and doesn't have a clear pathway to be in a rotation. You probably could flip him for something of value if you wanted to. So it's just an interesting spot. The one thing that I wonder, who do the Mets have that really warrants that eighth spot in the bullpen instead of just keeping Megill up, having him be a long man or having Paul Blackburn be a long man and rolling with that for a while and just see how it all works out? Because the only option that I look at in Syracuse that could be an impact arm is Daniel Nunez, and he didn't look great when he came up this year. Now, he's made 3 appearances in Syracuse since, has not given up a run, but I'm not looking at game logs where he's striking out 3 and not walking anybody. I still don't know if Daniel Nunez has locked back into the guy he was last year. So the Mets are going to have an interesting choice to make next week. It very well could be a 6-man rotation moving forward, and they just continue to roll with Megill. It could be an opportunity where you give Blackburn one start, and if it doesn't go well, he goes right into the bullpen. And again, these starts are going to come against the Dodgers, and Dodgers in LA. So that will be a very tough return to the big leagues for Paul Blackburn. We'll see how it all works out, but Tylor Megill is definitely on the hot seat, and I don't think this start necessarily helped him. I don't think it hurt him either. It wasn't a bad start by any stretch of the imagination, but he still couldn't get through 6. And he has not shown the ability to get through 6 at all this season. One time in 11 starts. That doesn't really point towards a guy that you have to keep in the rotation, especially when you've seen so much more from all the other guys in this rotation. I mean, there is no doubt that David Peterson is far and away ahead of him in the pecking order. Griffin Canning has been unbelievable, especially for the price that he's getting paid. Clay Holmes has handled that transition to be a starting pitcher seamlessly, and Kodai Senga looks like Kodai Senga again. So Tylor Megill is really going to have to show out against the Dodgers to force the Mets to keep him up, because the greatest flexibility for this roster is probably to option him down and bring up anybody, whether it is Daniel Nunez or another arm that they find off of waivers. By the way, speaking of that, Genesis Cabrera cleared waivers but opted for free agency instead of going back to Syracuse. So he'll probably latch on somewhere else. Actually, I think he did sign somewhere else. Where did he sign? Was it the Twins? I could be making that up. Genesis Cabrera, Cubs. Cubs signed him. So kind of frustrating too, because the Mets end up DFAing him to get Waddell up, and then Waddell hasn't pitched. Funny how that works out. But again, you look at where the Mets are at right now, you look at their roster, and just how much having a 6-man rotation can kind of hamstring your bullpen. I really think we could be looking at one last start for Megill, and then they'll make the move. But again, if you want to make the argument that Tylor Megill out of the bullpen or Paul Blackburn out of the bullpen is a more valuable piece of this roster than a Daniel Nunez, you got a pretty good argument there. So I will never say never. There very well could be a chance that Megill never does use that option this season, and he still holds on to it for next year. Definitely a possibility, because you're also always one injury away from moving right back up that depth chart. But for now, I think that's where the Mets are at. Now, Today, you got a day game instead of a night game because of impending weather. They moved up that game, so it's going to be Griffin Canning going up against the number 1 pick from the Rule 5 draft, Shane Smith, who's been unbelievable this year, 2.36 ERA for the White Sox. So it'll be very interesting to see how a potential pitcher's duel could play out, but maybe the Mets can carry over their momentum from this game and have another big offensive day, close out a series sweep. This is a golden opportunity for this team. Chance to sweep the White Sox, get a day off, and then potentially sweep the worst team in baseball in the Rockies and really move up in the standings. The Phillies did beat the Braves in game 1 of their series, so they're holding on to a 1.5 game lead in this division. But I would hope the Braves, which is horrible to say, you never expect that to say, I hope the Braves do well, but kind of would hope the Braves win at least one of the next couple games against the Phillies so the Mets can gain some in the standings. But you can't let an opportunity like this slip by. So this is the time for the Mets to really pile up some wins. And I think they're looking like a team that is ready to do just that. Now, I will be live after the game today. Chris Schubert, unable to do day games with the day job he's got. So your typical Locked On Mets postcast host will not be available. So I will be doing a post-game stream. That does not mean I will not be doing my normal show that goes up in the mornings. I will have a probably 2-segment show after the game and then a full 3-segment episode of Locked On Mets that'll go up on Thursday morning. As always, thank you all for tuning in. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find a link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen or your first watch every day, not for your second watch. Head over to YouTube and check out the first ever 24/7 streaming channel that covers everything in the world of sports. I'm talking about Locked On Sports Today. There are local hosts from each team, league-wide hosts from each league. Follow Locked On Sports Today streaming 24/7 on YouTube.